Refit eventually didn't happen, and we've got what is colloquially referred to as the Rebid. If we quickly look at what the RP 2010 means, and again this has been referred to, our calculations show that wind and solar PV alone will require us to invest 350 billion rand by 2030. And that's 18 billion rand per annum. Broken down, still a very considerable sum of money. Somewhat distressingly, the direct foreign investment into South Africa dropped to 11 billion rand last year, which was down 70% on the previous year. But you can see what's required annually in terms of investment exceeds the direct foreign investment we had into South Africa last year, which just shows you how important it is to keep the investment community unnervous, if I can coin that word. I think it's clear that Eskom doesn't have the money to, on its own, fulfill South Africa's energy needs, and the private sector is required to assist. And in that context, I think long-term trust and confidence is incredibly important. And if we go into the RFQ that's been discussed, one of the things the points I'd just like to make is that I'm going to agree that it's an excellent set of documents without any obvious flaws to it, but also something that puts a very high total hurdle onto project developers, and one must always be careful that if you load a very heavy load on a young camel, that you don't break the camel's back in year one. In terms of complexity, NERSA always said that this has to be simple to make it happen. The one criticism that can be brought in against the present RFQ is that it's very, very complex. The compliance cost would have been low under the Refit. The compliance cost now is extremely high. Just to give an example, you have to put down 100,000 rand bid bond for every megawatt you're going to bid. On a 50 megawatt project, that's 5 million rand. If you're one of the preferred bidders, you have to triple that up to 15 million to stay in the game. We think that there was a very good alignment and trust between stakeholders and NERSA previously. We think that synergy has been compromised to some extent, and we find it unfortunate that has happened.
We'll have a bidders conference. I think that's where we're at now. But it's the 14th, sorry, not the 24th. It's the 14th of September, but the date wrong. And then we will announce preferred bidders by around November this year.
By global standards for an IPP program, it is enormous, even though individual projects may not be that big. So on our maths, which plus minus may or may not be right, we reckon about $10 to $11 billion, 70 to 80 billion rand is needed for the RFP. That's divided between debt, for which there's a preference for rand financing, and equity, which is assuming about 30%, that's about $3 billion. Assuming the scheme goes well, that will be a very large FDI component to South Africa. It will generate thousands of jobs around the country, which will be sustainable over the long term. Clearly, there's a lot of work to do in order to get there, but if this capital is raised, it will be a major achievement for the country. It's an 8 out of 10 sign-off. We thoroughly believe renewable energy is on the right track, and very much hope to support clients fulfil their objectives in the sector.
As to the sustainability of the program from an economic and financial dimension, I think it is extremely important that the program that is being put out for procurement of renewable energy be sustainable and defendable in both those respects. What the South African government has tried to do in the renewable energy IPP program is to create something that is extremely sustainable, and we will not we do not want to, and as a country we cannot afford to, end up with a situation that has happened in European countries where at a point in time the government entities have had to say, well, actually we can't afford this. We can't afford that as a country. We don't want that as a country. So what we were also having to focus on is designing a program that would deliver as many projects in a shorter period of time as possible. Those of you who have worked on big infrastructure projects will know that you can spend 3 years negotiating the concession or the PPP agreement. We can't afford that. So we've been trying to put together a program that actually works and will deliver as maximum projects in as short a time as possible.